Well, good morning, everybody. I'm sorry for that delay. We were having some technology and electricity issues. Clerk, will you go ahead and call the roll?
Agent.
Yes, are here.
Craig.
Here.
Nailing it today.
First thing in the morning.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Willits.
Here.
Woodings.
Here.
All present.
Great, thank you. Well, as we kick off, Courtney's going to start with an overview, but first I want to say thanks to all the folks in the room. It's once a year or probably once a year that we get all of our directors together as we walk through the programs and services that our city is providing to the public. And so it's nice to see you all in one place. And to the employees that are likely tuning in as well, I want to extend a thanks for all that you've done the last year in particular, but also all that you've done to set us up for the conversation that we're having today. And it's a conversation that's, I think, is really exciting. The council and our office have been clear that we are committed to ensuring that we really create a city for everyone. And in doing that, that means that we take care of people. And the budget workshop that we're going to be walking through demonstrates our best efforts, and I think really incredible efforts on behalf by staff on behalf of the public to do just that. And so as we talk about the services that can be delivered department by department, and we're thinking always about the impact that that has on our community, and really the people of Boise are served by the people of Boise City. And it really is people that create programs that create the city for everyone. So look forward to the conversation from hearing each of you. And I know that council is just as excited and look forward to the conversation with them too. Let's go ahead and get started.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Courtney Washburn. I am the Chief of Staff for the City of Boise. Apologies for the rocky start. For those who were in the building yesterday, you also got the email that said we didn't have any water yesterday. So something is happening within the building, but hopefully all the pieces and parts will cooperate for the rest of the day. I am going to give you an overview of today, and then I'll return at the end of the day to summarize and do any follow-up items that are necessary. So we just want to start with reminding you of the mission we used in order to begin our budget build and the direction we gave the departments for the information you'll hear today. Our focus is on a city for everyone while embracing the community in our decision-making, protecting the environment, and ensuring a thriving local economy. And I just want to do a quick stop to remind you of where we are in the budget process. We have conducted a budget interactive workshop. We made the budget website available for comments on community priorities. Today, we're before you with workshop number 1. My computer's telling me I'm muted. Hopefully that's not true. Today is the City Council Budget Workshop, which has all our department directors giving you presentations on 2 main topics. One is we've asked them to speak to the impact of your previous investment within their department, and 2, to talk about the impact you're likely to see from the current proposed budget. And then the budget book will be released on the 17th, and we will return to you with a second workshop on the 28th, while providing an online opportunity for public feedback. And then the public hearing will be on the 19th. So our goal in this meeting today is really to give you the best overview we can on the department and the impact of your investments. My goal in this meeting is to capture any questions, any need for follow-up information, any need for clarification. Because we have all the departments today and we want to give them the most time, I'll be capturing a lot of that feedback in order to follow up at a future date with that information. So feel free to ask higher level questions. But keep in mind, we've got 14 departments and a council meeting today. So it'd be super helpful if we could keep to the impact and allow me to follow up with more detailed information. So today's agenda starts with, after me is Eric Bilmoria to talk about the math and the numbers associated with the themes I will touch on. And then we're going to start with the internal service departments. And then we're going to move to the more community-focused departments. And then after lunch, go to public safety and end with the 2 enterprise funds. I don't know what you all are saying, but my screens are coming in and out. All right. The themes you'll hear today within the departments and in the budget build are to advance community priorities. Those are affordable housing, climate action, transportation, economic opportunity, health and safety. We've also taken into consideration the direction to maximize the federal funding opportunities, which you'll hear more about throughout the day, the need to stabilize our workforce, and to invest in facilities and people power to continue to provide service and to respond to inflation. Our considerations were providing property tax relief, keeping pace with growth, and ensuring the service delivery that Boiseans expect and deserve. The highlights include enhanced facilities and amenities, parks, pathways, the new cultural site, fire stations that are new and will be upgraded. We have given consideration to the highest and best use of city-owned property in the downtown core. We're proposing new positions to support the workload of a growing city and to address some of our employee compensation needs. Also, the impactful use of ARPA funding for community priorities. Again, you'll hear more about this at your new meeting, but those issues include affordable housing, climate action, childcare, food security, mental health support, small business support, and broadband access. So I just want to touch on the overall growth of the state and the community. As you know, this has been a main focus of the city in the last budget build and continues to be so in this one. According to the census estimate, Idaho led all the states in year-over-year percentage population growth from 2020 to 2021, which is 2.9%. The Treasure Valley Metropolitan Statistical Area, that does not roll off the tongue, the MSA and the city of Boise have grown roughly 17% and 6.5% respectively in the last 5 years. And then Boise continues to be the economic driver and cultural center of the state. The number one priority, if you were to ask all the directors we have in the room, and likely all of our senior managers and probably everyone, is our need to stabilize our workforce. I bring this before you myself to ensure you understand that if our departments were to prioritize any investment, it would be in the stabilization of the workforce. So we propose to fill our vacancy rates, which in some cases are high, but it's not equally distributed through the departments. We need to meet increasing workload demands by adding staff, and we need to remain competitive in the market by retaining the talent we have and recruiting the talent we need. And as a result, we need to right-size our human resource departments to meet the demands and the challenges we're currently facing. The staffing growth trends are on the slide. You can see between fiscal year 2017 and 2020, an average of 28 positions was added. That includes the year of no staff growth associated with COVID. Last year, we added 44 positions, and this year the proposal is 45 positions. And these are the breakdown of the positions requested. The largest is the airport. And as you'll notice on your slide, throughout the day, if it's highlighted in that bright green, it's to indicate it's an enterprise fund. And if it's in the blue, it's to indicate it's in the general fund. So the smallest asks are in IT, arts and history, and Public Works General Fund, and the largest is in the airport. I'm going to spend a little time highlighting the need in human resources because, as I mentioned previously, this is the highest priority of the departments as a whole. On employee compensation, as I mentioned, we need to retain our talented team, remain competitive when recruiting, and maintain our employees' buying power in challenging times. Our approach to address this with the general employees is a 5.9% COLA increase and an increase in our living wage from $13.53 to $16.15. We also intend to absorb all the health cost increases associated with our general employees and to offer a one-time 2.5% increase to our current performance awards. And this is the proposed strategy to build capacity within the Human Resource Department. We currently house pretty much everything that has to do with hiring in employment services. We're proposing to break those out. One arm in green will continue to focus on talent acquisition, and the blue arm is the new proposal to create human resource business partners. The city has used the business partner model in many different ways. You may be most familiar with it in the Office of Community Engagement, where staff in that space are assigned to departments. The goal is to accomplish multiple things. The departments would have their person within HR to help them deal with their challenges and opportunities. It is clear we need better workforce planning. You have heard, particularly in public safety, our planned retirements versus our need to grow staff, and we need to do a lot more planning in those spaces, similar to bringing in the talent we're currently using for the staffing study for public safety. And so moving forward, each of these positions would have a book of departments, if you will, to ensure that we are staying current with recruitment practices. We have an understanding of what's happening in our workforce, and to position the city to be in a much more proactive place than we currently are, which is pretty reactive, non-specialized, and has really been one of the challenges in order to fill our vacancy rates and fill the new positions we propose. And I'm sure Sarah, in her presentation, will go through the impact of these investments, but I just wanted to make sure you understood this model behind the FTE ask.
Madam Mayor,
Sure.
could I ask two quick questions about the last slide and one before it? So as I look at the breakup of how the business partners are going to be assigned, I assume that we'll get some explanation of, I don't know, the groupings didn't necessarily make sense to me, put it that way. So some did, some didn't. So at some point, just some explanation about how that business partner either will work across dissimilar or how they are similar. The other question I have is in the growth in FTE, I think with both with the water bond and the move of the airport to a medium hub, we're seeing more significant growth in those two areas, I believe, than we've seen in the past. So it would be helpful to see FTEs broken out by general fund and enterprise, if we could at some point.
Madam Mayor, Council President, just a point of clarification. Do you want to see the staff growth projections for the airport and for the enterprise funds?
And if you look past, I mean, the jump in growth, is it, I assume there's some general, but I bet a lot of it is those enterprise funds. It'd be good to know that.
Okay, got it.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor, with that, I am going to hand the.
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were close to done, Courtney. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question about, are we still doing exit interviews? I think it's alarming that we lost the arts and history director. It seems like she was here a handful of months before she's gone. And I'm wondering if we're going to do, if we have, or if we're going to do an exit interview to determine why somebody at that level would leave after such a short amount of time. I think it's important for us to have that information.
Madam Mayor, council member, it's my understanding exit interviews are being conducted with all employees who are willing to participate in those. The specifics of that, I'm not sure, but we can follow up. Thank you. Okay. With that, I am going to hand the presentation over to Eric.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm going to do a handful of slides this morning to go over some themes that were considered in developing the proposed fiscal year 23 budget, some strategies and investments, as well as talk a little bit about property tax. So in terms of themes, the first one that I'll focus in on is fiscal responsibility. This is a theme that we include each year. And I'll talk to a few different items here. The first thing is it's always imperative that when we are building our forecast and evaluating investment opportunities, that the growth is sustainable. And we measure that by looking at our long-term forecast and ensuring that it's balanced. So in other words, evaluating the long-term implications of short-term recommendations. The package that is included as part of the fiscal year 23 proposed budget that will be released on June 17th, we believe to be sustainable and provides additional growth opportunities into the future. In terms of M&O, or another way to think about that would be our non-personnel type funding, there's minimal growth built in. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on a subsequent slide. But that's another example of fiscal responsibility. And then the last thing that I'll in terms of a high level on this one is a proactive use of one-time savings. So you'll recall that as part of the fiscal year 22 budget, we recognized in advance savings from the prior fiscal year 21, and built that into the budget process. We have continued that strategy as part of this budget cycle, assuming approximately $14.5 million of one-time savings in the current year into next year, a healthy portion of that attributable to our high level of vacancies and one-time ensuing savings. We also have built in terms of one-time savings, a higher assumed vacancy rate for fiscal year 23. We haven't assumed that into the outer years. We hope that with some of the investments that are proposed that we can bring that vacancy number down, but we do know that it will take a period of time. So we have proactively allocated some of those planned savings as part of the fiscal year 23 budget. In terms of property tax relief, the proposed package will include a 2.45% recommendation in terms of base growth. State code allows for growth up to 3%. This would be the second year out of the last 3 years that the full 3% was not recommended. You recall 2 years ago, there was 0% base growth built in. The current fiscal year assumed 3%, and with the 2.45% recommended for next fiscal year, that comes to an average of 1.8% annual growth since the beginning of the pandemic. The fiscal year 23 proposed budget also will include one-time funding for a circuit breaker rebate. There was a bill that was approved by the state legislature as part of this most recent session that allowed municipalities to provide property tax rebates to the community. This $1.2 million would enable additional support for community members who take advantage of the circuit breaker program. Courtney spoke a little bit to some of these other themes, so I won't dwell on them for too long, but the budget, it does reflect investments to community priorities, including housing, transportation, and climate action. The budget was built in response to growth, or there was a consideration of response to growth. An example of that could be the Northwest Fire Station, investments in our parks, and you'll see recommended staffing increases for the zoo, parks maintenance services, police staffing is recommended to be increased, and then our support departments in response to growth throughout the city. The fiscal year 23 budget considers inflation. So I previously spoke to the property tax approach, the 2.45% increase versus the 3% to provide some level of relief to community members who are feeling the impacts of our high inflationary environment. Our M&O funding, and I guess I'll speak a little bit to this one right now. If you think about all the goods and services that the city procures, the cost of all of those are going up due to this inflationary environment. On the previous slide, I mentioned that the fiscal year 23 budget has minimal maintenance and operations growth, and there's really kind of competing factors that are occurring right now. So you have cost escalation for everything that we buy is costing more and more. At the same time, we have a high level of vacancies, which is impacting our ability to spend our budget and to execute all the projects that we've have planned over the last couple of years. So for fiscal year 23, the approach has been minimal M&O funding, and as a matter of fact, in some instances, some reductions in recognition of the fact that we have a high level of vacancies. However, in the long-term forecast, we have allowed for increases to reflect the current inflationary environment, knowing that, you know, the cost of those goods and services in future years will be higher.
Madam Mayor. Thanks. I'm going to pop in here with a few questions. The M&O funding, you weren't around then, but I was around when we ended up inheriting a bubble of funding that had not been taken care of for some of the similar reasons that you talk about. Let's put it off. Let's figure out how to do it later. And because we do have so much one time, I know in the face of inflation, we think it's going to go down and it's going to get less expensive. I guess my experience over the years is not sure that's going to happen. I don't want to end up with an M&O bubble for someone in the future to have to fix.
Thank you very much, Council President. Maybe I can elaborate a little bit more on that. So when we've built our forecast, we've taken a 10-year approach and looked at projected revenues and expenses over a 10-year period. And as we look at those projected expenses, we have grown our maintenance and operations assumptions in the outer years to reflect the current inflationary environment. So it's really kind of a short-term recognition of the fact that we have a high level of vacancies. However, our long-term forecast, even 1 year out, allows for an increase to M&O precisely to avoid the dynamic you're talking about.
Thank you. So if I could follow up, I guess that gets me, and I know we're staying high level today, but at some point, I would like to see those trend projections on a graph. I know it's numbers. I like to see those numbers, and hopefully before we get the budget book so that we can kind of dig in a little bit and see where those trends are going. And that would be my second question, which is, given the 2.45% and the 1.8% over the last few years, what's the prediction going out? Are we going to go back up to 3%? If we are, what's the base trend look like in terms of all of these things that we're adding going out?
Certainly, Council President, we can provide more detail in terms of those trends. In terms of the long-term forecast, the base assumption is the 3% in subsequent years of the forecast.
And just to follow up on that, what we have always done is you'll see in charts moving forward, we keep it at 3%. And then we determine, as I've committed to do, whether or not it's possible to not take that in response to circumstances on the ground. So last year we had projected 3% for this year when we looked at the models and the charts as a council, but then we were able to look at the reality of the year and say, okay, we don't have to do that. And that's the tack that they've taken moving forward as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we don't leave some big needs down the road because we're trying to save money today.
Absolutely. The last item in terms of the response to inflation is an allowance for an economic uncertainty reserve. Given the volatility that we're seeing in the economy, the high rate of inflation, should we see things continue at this pace? Should we fill our positions at a higher rate than maybe we had anticipated, and we need to spend more maintenance and operation funding? We do have an economic uncertainty reserve allowance for fiscal year 23. Courtney spoke a little bit about employee compensation and staffing levels. Some specific investments included as part of the fiscal year 23 package include numerous accounting changes related to housing activities. Over the last several years, the City Council has approved investments towards various housing related activities. Those have been allocated partially in the general fund, partially in the capital fund, partially within the housing funds. So there is a recommendation to streamline that a little bit, to provide for a higher degree of transparency, as well as maybe some more predictability in terms of planning. There's also a one-time recommendation to do a transfer from the general fund to support housing activities in fiscal year 23. Consistent with the current year budget, there is a recommendation for a portfolio fund, effectively one-time projects that are still going through due diligence. You'll recall that over the course of the last year, we've been bringing forward IBCs at various times to move that money out of the portfolio account and into the departments. And this recommendation continues that approach. I spoke to the minimal growth in M&O funding. The fiscal year 23 budget includes investments within public safety. So on the Capitol, you can think about fire stations, both Northwest Station as well as Station 5. There are staffing adjustments proposed for both the police and fire departments, as well as funding for additional academies, recognizing that we do have a high level of vacancies, recognizing that we are going to bring Northwest Station on board. The capital plan includes funding to enable the relocation of parks maintenance services out of Julia Davis Park in fiscal year 23 and fire logistics in fiscal year 24. And the capital plan is reflective of the most recent impact fee update approved by the City Council earlier this year. In terms of property tax, I mentioned the 2.45% base increase. We also have assumed the full amount of allowable new construction to ensure growth pays for growth. In landing on the 2.45% base increase, it was an attempt to strike a balance between preserving service levels and keeping up with growth while providing relief to homeowners. The 0.55% not recommended to be taken. So The difference between the 2.45% and the max of 3% is recommended to be taken as foregone for potential future use from some future city council.
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
just semantics there, not taken as foregone, but booked as foregone so that in the future we get to take it. Am I right?
That is correct. Thank you for that clarification. Yes. In terms of the circuit breaker expansion, $1.2 million allocated for a property tax rebate for qualifying applicants. Staff is currently working to develop proposed parameters of that program. The city council would need to approve an ordinance related to that. So certainly, once we get beyond the budget process, we would have opportunities for discussion in terms of the parameters of that program. And we're targeting a late summer approval of that ordinance. The final thing is in terms of property tax, it is reflective of impacts from last year's legislation, which limited the amount of new construction and annexation value that could be used for incremental property tax growth. Our long-term assumptions account for reduced amount of urban renewal district funding or retirement of urban renewal districts, which is realized as new construction. And then finally, it is reflective of the new construction formula that was approved by the legislature last year. I'll go through the average homeowner impact. We show this chart each year. It's a little bit more complex this year because we're not taking 0 or 3, it's somewhere between. But I'll kind of walk through it. The first thing you can see on line 2 is that for the average priced home within the city of Boise, it has increased from $440,000 to $564,000, a 28.2% increase. With the homeowner's exemption being fixed at $125,000.
And I'm sorry, Eric, I just want to be clear for the public. I'm not seeing that on this chart. I'll find it eventually, but that 28% increase in value was not determined by the city of Boise, but determined by the county assessor.
That is correct, Mayor. Yes. After accounting for the fixed exemption on line 4, you can see that the taxable value for the average home is actually increased by 39.4%. The resulting levy rate is actually a decrease of 21.5%. And the reason that the levy rate is decreasing from fiscal year 23 as opposed to 22 is because of the rapid rate of assessed valuation. So as valuation goes up, it has the effect of depressing the levy rate. Even with a reduced levy rate, you can see on line 6 that if the city were to take the full 3% increase, taxes would go up by 9.4%. City taxes would go up by 9.4%.
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
just to clarify, Eric, they go up for some people by that amount, right? Taking 3% doesn't result in a 9% increase across the board. For some properties, they go up by that amount, and then presumably for others, they would go down.
Well, this is based on the average assessed value. So on average, 9.4%.
Right, but across the board, the tax base, the entire taxable properties are taxed. If we take the 3%, the amount goes up by 3%. The resulting tax on some properties is 9%, but it's not 9% for every single property in the city of Boise because that math doesn't work.
Right, because it's an average.
Right, exactly. That was my point. So it's homeowners that we're talking about here.
That is correct. This is just for the average residential owner occupied property. Yes.
Thanks.
The dollar change for that average home, if the city were to take 3%, would be $136.25. Then that middle section, we do an analysis to say, all right, what would it look like if the city took 0%? So you can see lines 9, 10, and 11 are mirror images of the lines up above. The levy rate on line 12 would be slightly less at 0% versus 3%. The there would still be an increase, even if the city took no base increase, and the increase would be nearly $90 or a 6.2% increase. So that increase is really indicative of the burden shift that we've been talking so much about over the last several years. No increase would still equate to an increase on the residential property. And I can speak a little bit more about that when I get to the right-hand side of the slide. The bottom portion here, shaded in gray, represents the recommendation of 2.45%. And again, lines 17, 18, 19 are the same as up above. The levy rate is slightly lower than if we took the 3%. You can see on line 22 that the change year over year would be $127. You can see that the savings from 2.45% to 3% is approximately $8.50. Therefore, the cost of the $2 or the 2.45% base increase is $37.82. So on the right-hand side, let me break that down maybe a different way. If the city were to take the full 3% increase, it would be an increase on the average homeowner of $136.25. Nearly $90 of that is outside of the city's control. It is attributable to burden shift, which leaves $46.31 as the impact if the city were to take the full 3%, knowing that the cost of the 2.45% is $37.82. The resulting savings from taking less than 3% is that $8.50. The pie chart kind of exemplifies, the burden shift, and you can see of the max $136, approximately 2/3 of it is not being able to be impacted by the city. It's just true burden shift, residential taking on burden that was previously borne by the commercial sector. The orange slices of those pie represent 3%, with the lighter orange representing the 2.45%. So the darker orange represents the 0.55%, which is not recommended to be taken as part of this budget cycle. The burden shift that we talk about is really attributable to two primary factors. The first is the diminishing value of the homeowner's exemption. So as assessed values continue to increase and the homeowner's exemption remains fixed, the homeowner's exemption becomes less and less impactful each year. The second is the rate of growth for residential properties versus commercial properties. The most recent numbers that we've received from the county assessor's office show residential property growing by 29.2%, with commercial properties assessed values growing approximately 10% less than that at 19.3%.
Eric, I think it'd be helpful in the future for us to demonstrate, because it's all, this is such a hard chart I wish that we could do with a kindergarten version of this chart so that it was, we could easily talk about it. But the exemption, it's so theoretical to folks that, oh, well, if the exemption was more, it would make a difference, or this is all shifted because the exemption is the same, that I think it would be useful for those that like to really look at the numbers. And then frankly, from a storytelling perspective, to demonstrate, if it is best practice to index the growth of the exemption to something. And if that were to happen, what would this look like?
Mm-hmm.
To be able to kind of from an average homeowner perspective, paint the impact of that number in the same way that we try to paint the impact of the burden shift, but also our decision to provide some relief while making sure we maintain investments and level of service.
Absolutely, we can work on that. And I will mention that last year, I don't have the number for this year, but had the homeowner's exemption continued to be indexed after it was fixed, it would be approximately $175,000 1 year ago. So it's probably closer to around $200,000 now if it was continued to be indexed.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor, one other thing that, people who are trying to get their head around this chart should think about, and we should think about too, is I remember 2 years ago, the amount of property tax increase attributable to burden shift was between $35 and $40. This year, it's close to 100. But that $35 or $40 is already baked into this year's number. In other words, the burden shifts, it gets added, and then it gets baked into next year. So
Oh, yeah, the cumulative.
taxpayer, it's a cumulative, it's not even death by 1,000 cuts because it's a death by 1,000 like big whacks with a hatchet. But each year it gets cooked in and then it shifts again, and then it gets cooked in and then it gets shifted again. So if taxpayers looked at, what it was like for them 5 years ago, they'd see a burden shift for the average one that's probably hundreds of dollars. And then, the average is the average for whatever a standard deviation number of homeowners is, it's thousands of dollars. So it's just another thing to think about. It's not that we're having the burden shift conversation every year. It's that the burden shift is cumulative and wearing and worse every year.
Absolutely. Thank you, council member.
Madam Mayor.
We've got
Oh, sorry.
Lucy and then
Thanks.
Eric, I have a kindergarten question. So as we look at this full number, is the city getting the total of that? Like, let's say we took the 3%, is the city getting $136 and 89 of it is out of our control? Or are we only getting the $46? Like what cash are we accumulating from this?
So it's somewhat of a separate analysis. Year over year, the city's base growth is 2.45%. I don't have that on a dollar basis quite ready to go, but I can get it for you later on this morning. The city's collections are fixed. It can only grow by up to 3% plus growth. So the differences here are who's paying for that 3% or up to 3% plus growth. So in other words, the $136 or $127.76 on line 22, the city is receiving, but it's not necessarily it is not an 8.8% increase as demonstrated on that line in terms of what the city is collecting year over year growth. It's 2.45%.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, if I may, another way of saying that would be that the 136 is the amount of taxes that the homeowner will pay, 89 of that, and they'll pay it to the city. We'll receive the whole 136 if we took the 3%, but $90 of that is money that last year commercial properties were paying as a part of the whole, and this year residential properties are paying it instead.
That is correct. Thank you. You said that much better than I did.
Okay, thank you. So my question on the burden shift is, I'm glad to see these charts and glad to see this. I think we can talk about it better now. As I listen to people talk about the property tax issue and how to provide relief, I hear folks saying, well, we can't shift taxes onto commercial, so we can't do anything about the homeowner's exemption. And what I'm seeing here is that we're ignoring years and years of shift from commercial onto residential and saying there's no fix for that. We can't shift it back. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, that is correct. There have been multiple years of a shift that's been occurring, and that shift has been from commercial to residential. Yes.
And the only way to fix that would be to shift some of it back onto commercial, but it wouldn't be an outsized burden on them. It would actually be bringing them up to what used to be the average of what they would pay as a portion, overall proportion.
That is correct. And at the next budget workshop, I can have an update to the slide that shows the burden shift. If you go back to 15, 20 years ago, it was roughly 50-50 between commercial and residential. And now it's more like 75-25.
Wow. Thank you.
Another way to put that is a little oversimplified, but it's basically true as I understand it, is if your taxes have gone up, if we take 3% and your taxes go up by more than 3%, basically that means someone else's taxes have gone down to offset that increase, right? If your taxes go up by 6%, 3% of it was attributable to us. That other 3% that you're paying is 3% that someone else is not paying. And that someone else is the owners of commercial property here. So to the council president's point, it's not a burden shift. It's just asking someone to pick up the quasi free ride that they've been getting for the last 5 or 6 years.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. We have gone way over on this. So is this the last slide or do you have more?
That was my last slide.
Oh, it was. Okay, great. Let's move into Department of Resources. And I really appreciate the conversation on this, and the more that we can do to demonstrate both visually and with some other scenarios, the impact of the shift related to the homeowner's exemption, but also assessments, like the change in the vast difference in growth of assessments. I think the better for folks to understand. And also just one point of clarification, when we talk about taking 3% or taking 2.45%, it actually means that we're increasing our revenues only by 2.45% or 3%. And then from that increase of revenues, everything else gets figured out in the levy rate, et cetera. So at a time when we know that, inflation is, I think, between 6 and 8% in our region, by law, we are only allowed to increase our budgets by 3% this year as a recognition of the impact on homeowners and taxpayers. Frankly, we're saying, okay, let's try to do it with 2.45%, but that's just the revenue that we then have to budget from. Welcome, Sarah.
All right. Well, good morning, Mayor and council members. My name is Sarah Borden. I'm the proud director of the Human Resources Department. As we all know, we've been through a couple of years that have been pretty rocky and pretty rough. But I'm really excited to come today to all of you because I think we figured out a path forward that will ease some of that burden and will just make us more successful overall. So I'm very happy to be here. One just point of clarification for Council President on the question about the HR business partners. That's very fluid. In fact, the directors haven't even seen the mixes and matches. It was for me to make sure that I could understand the volume of work each business partner would have. So just trying to balance it. So that we can move lots of different ways. So no one in here should worry about that at this point. So let me talk to you a little bit, there we go, about sort of where we've been. So as you know, talent acquisition has been really tough. We have vacancies, we're at it, we keep at it, and we stayed relatively flat. So the community engagement team has been phenomenal partners with us. They came to us and said, hey, we have some ideas on how we might improve your recruitment advertising. Very excited to show you the vehicle wrap on that car that we can all drive anytime we check out a car and announce that we're here and we have a presence in the Valley. So we've done some work on increasing our recruitment advertising, and the result of that so far, and it's still relatively new, but so far we've seen a 10% increase in page views, which is always exciting that we have more people coming to our city jobs page, and that's where the bulk of our positions, that's where the bulk of the new hires are getting information about our positions. And then we also have a QR code. You may have seen it on the corner of the HR space over there where people can just, with their cell phones zap the QR code. We've had 305 scans that take them to our HR landing page. So anytime we can get eyes on our landing page, that's great. The other thing that's pretty exciting when you have a minute, if you go in and look at our jobs page, the CE team has revamped it. It's much more graphically appealing, and we can rotate jobs that we really are trying to fill quickly or are harder to fill. And then they can click on every other job they might look at, but it's just a way for us to get eyes more dedicated to the positions we're trying to hire. So that's been a really exciting partnership, and that hopefully will continue. The other thing we've done, as you can see, we're asking for resources that Courtney presented around really focusing on talent acquisition. In the meantime, while we wait to get approvals, if that works, and then build that team, we've contracted with some direct recruitment support from an outside contractor to come in for the next 3 months and really focus on job families. Think water renewal. Those are similar kinds of jobs. Let's give that recruiter that book of business just to keep after it. So we try to make some gains in that area. Time and attendance software, that is not always the sexiest project, but it's an important one. Public safety has been on 2 different time and attendance platforms. That doesn't make a lot of sense. The one we have now is really outdated. It's not very efficient, and it's certainly not user-friendly. So this is sort of, as part of doing business, something we need to do. That's on track to be go live the end of July. We're in testing right now. So hopefully, cross our fingers, we'll stay on that. Then we also had security support, and I know that you all have engaged pretty heavily with that team. Think the ambassador desk downstairs, as well as support in the libraries. It was kind of a proof of concept last year to see, is this a workable solution? Is this helpful? And based on the data we've got, it certainly has been. So that's another part of sort of the ask you'll hear moving forward around just continuing and making more permanent that security support, because we think that's been really good. It hasn't only provided sort of a sense of security for our employees and the community, but they've also really done a lot of good customer service. Think wayfinding. Somebody comes into City Hall, aren't sure where to go. So they can help with that a lot. And then last fall, we did a market rate adjustment, and, compression is a fancy word for just saying sort of all the different implications that come from moving market rates up. We were able to do that. And part of this ask that Courtney mentioned is to stay on top of that. If we sort of settle and go, okay, we did the market rate adjustment last year, we'll be back trying to catch up a year from now. So really, now that we're up, how do we maintain that? So that's where we've been. And then let me just mention sort of where we're going. The bulk of our work in HR is really implementing the jobs, hopefully, that we can get based on your approval, and making that sort of transformation in the department. But in addition, we want to continue doing the recruitment advertising. We don't want to just advertise. We want to lead. We want to be present. We want people to see us first. That means being on Boise Dev. It means driving cars around with the wraps, hearing us on the radio, that kind of thing. So maintaining that leading presence. We also have capital security improvements, just so we stay on top of that, make sure everybody's safe and secure. So those are pretty straightforward. And then there's a couple projects that we are hoping to work on around the employee experience. We used to hear a lot about customer experience, but now if we don't have employees, the customer is going to lose out, no doubt. So how do we really focus on the employee experience? One being a total rewards project. What do people care about today? What will attract people to the city? We certainly have fabulous retirement and lots of other really great benefits. This, next generation of workforce might say, you know what, I'd rather have more vacation than more pay. I might want something different than what you've been offering and been successful with in the past. So we need to stay on top of that, and again, try to lead in that way. And then future of work, that we just keep talking about. There's so much changing. How do we make sure that as it changes, we're ready, and that we're not reactive, but we are proactive in getting ready for whatever's coming? So those 2 projects we think will strategically position us, along with sort of the transforming of the department, to really get us on top of it. And that's why I start out by saying I'm excited, because there's a lot of cool stuff I think coming. That's what I have. Any questions?
Madam Mayor.
We'll go first with Councilmember Sanchez and then Willetts. Was that
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hey.
Hi.
So I have a question. I don't know if we've done this already, so you'll forgive me if we have, but just like anything, we have reputations in the community. And have we done a survey in the community to see what the reputation of the city of Boise has as an employer? What are the impressions of the community when it comes to folks considering coming to work for the city of Boise?
I do not know of any survey. The HR department hasn't gone out and done that particular work.
I think that something like that would be valuable.
Okay.
Councilmember Willetts.
Yeah, 2 quick comments and 2 quick questions. First of all, I love the hot jobs cool What is it?
Yeah, it is. You got it. Hot
Did I
Tub
get
School
it?
People.
Suddenly
You had it.
I couldn't quite remember it. I love it, even if I couldn't remember it right at that time. I think it's really snazzy. And I have seen this in my own company about what it takes to recruit. And I think the fact that you're thinking about things bigger and what people value and having a value-based driven career is the future. That's what people want now. So thank you for thinking ahead. And as we know, like talent eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, we've heard that business does that. Any good company has the best and brightest working. So thank you for all that you're doing. Two questions that would help me. One, you can get me at another time. I'm curious about how many people are currently recruiting. And if we add these additional folks, that then we have them be more focused on certain areas. I'd like to just have a comparison, like
You
how
bet.
much increase that is.
You bet.
And then second of all, I think for transparency's sake, and just to reiterate, I had seen last year that the council had made an allocation for the ambassadors that would help with, frankly, security that was more related to COVID. It sounds like as we've transitioned, we've seen that those were good things anyway to do. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because it seemed like in the public mind, it was directly related to COVID. And I think we've learned some things from COVID. So give me more
Yes.
of an explanation.
Yes.
Well, and I'll jump in here first. I
Mhm.
mean, I would say it was related to the change in behavior that we saw across the country and in our community, was related to COVID. So it wasn't just that we wanted folks at the front because of COVID. We want to make sure that our employees feel safe and are able to provide the service that, as you said, they're value-driven people that they're here to provide. And we've learned, unfortunately, that one of the byproducts of the behavior of the last 2 years is a need to provide more safety for our employees. So in our libraries, down at the front desk, various places. And so that's where I'd say it wasn't COVID masking policies. It was the need to protect our employees in the face of behavior from those who are entering our buildings.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. And the really exciting side benefit has been the ability to provide better customer service. I mean, you've met our security staff, they're lovely people and can do security when they need to, but they can also really help people in our community sort of navigate where they need to go and for them to feel comfortable being here.
And I'll say too, the other benefit of having these folks be our employees is that they're accountable to us.
Yeah.
And so they go through our employee training. They know because they feel a part of the team, the folks that they're working alongside in all of our buildings. And then they're interfacing with the public in a way that's better reflective of the city of Boise's values while doing their job of keeping our employees safe.
Yep, agreed.
Madam Mayor. Sarah, quick question. You mentioned that we're going to look at a total rewards project. I assume that will include looking at how we offer healthcare benefits. We have a healthcare trust board, which makes a fair number of decisions about those benefits. We used to have a wages and benefits team, which was representative of each of the departments and elected by employees of that department. Are we thinking about bringing anything like that back so that we can ensure that as we make these changes, we're getting input from all over the organization?
Yes, Council President Clegg, it's sort of anything is on the table, really, because so much has changed. That's why I get excited about it. So much has changed that everything's possible. And then we just have to say, okay, based on all these different outcomes we're after, what is the best path forward? It could certainly be something like that. We also have sort of a focus on the compensation team and bringing that person into the total rewards team. So kind of that's part of the restructure as well. So we're really looking at all the total rewards everyone gets and making that a tighter unit, just even structurally. So anything's possible there.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to offer a quick comment on the recruitment support. I think that's such a great idea. We have so many recruiters in this community who know so many more people than we do.
Mhm.
And we're competing now against private industry and they're using recruiters all the time.
Yep.
So I think that that's a really smart move. and a really great way to target our resources in a way that gets us better outcomes. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It also, you know, we'll learn best practice from them. What are they doing as experts too? So there's lots of wins.
Madam Mayor, quick follow-up if you, okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing that I have encountered is I get folks contacting me all the time for recommendations for potential board members, that sort of thing. And something that I've come to do is I'm starting to ask questions about the organization. Are they ready to receive a diverse workforce? Where are they in their DEI training? That sort of thing. I don't know if you would know that, Sarah, but I think that's something that I would consider in terms of referring folks. And I'm not quite sure where we are on that here at the City of Boise. I know it's something that we've been working on. And I think it has been focused on HR. So that would be a question that I have about that.
Yeah. And I would just comment, Councilmember Sanchez, the exciting part again of doing our in-house recruiting ultimately, if we can move in that direction, is we get to decide that we could have more control over who we're looking for and how we're looking for folks. So that's part of us trying to build that capacity ourselves.
Yeah. One thing that, again, I come from civil rights investigator background, and the euphemisms that people use to let people know that they're not going to get the job or they are going to be fired is not fitting in. It's not a good fit, which tends to be code for a number of things. So, you know, just something to be aware of. I hope we don't use that terminology. And if we do, I hope we change.
Yeah, point well taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
You bet.
All right. Next up is Linda. Welcome. With Finance and Administration.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm Linda Lowry, the Department Director for Finance and Administration. So the last year has really been a continuation of the past. It's been a focus in DFA on people, process, and technology. So last year you approved an investment in a new grants manager and a couple FTEs. So we've hired and built that team, and that team is headed by Mary Brown, and she is ready and able to hopefully help administer our ARPA funds when we start spending there, as well as she's getting the lay of the land of the city and the grants processes of the city in general, and is very well positioned to help us leverage more grant opportunities in the future. In addition to that, we've done some restructuring in the city clerk's office. Because of vacancies, it's created an opportunity to move some people around, flatten the org structure a little bit, enhance our capabilities on the front line. And hopefully some of the efforts that you're seeing today in this budget in terms of compensation adjustments and so on and so forth will help us recruit and retain those positions. And we will be then able to successfully continue to implement new ordinances and administer new license types, new licenses, and generally be able to handle the growth that we're seeing here in our community and the impact that has to the city clerk's office. Technology-wise, we're continuing to replace aging systems in the clerk's office. We've had a cashiering system that I think was over 20 years old that we were utilizing that was supported by one man out of his garage. And so we were successfully able to replace that system. Just a few months ago, we went live, and that new cashiering system has a lot of new technology integrations, make the process a lot more seamless for our permanent licensing specialists at the upfront counter, and hopefully make the customer experience better as well. In addition, we continue to enhance our permanent licensing system. We implemented Acela, the permitting license system citywide here a few years ago, with the goal of still continuing to enhance that system to be able to automate even more license types, more processes. And additionally, as we've added additional ordinances and new license types, there's been a lot of work on the back end to be able to put those into the system and automate those so folks can do their business at the city how they prefer. They can walk in or they can do that all online. And so that's the goal there. As you're well aware, we've also had a lot of new ordinances this past year, as well, a lot of license type changes. There's been, a lot of policy work, a lot of support that's gone into those, a lot of policy implications, a lot of outreach, fee analysis system enhances, a lot of staff training, and a lot of standard operating procedure development that's gone along with a lot of those new ordinances as well. So we've been hard at work on that. And then you approved a position last year in the budget office to help support property tax analysis. So we're pleased to be able to fill that position. We felt like this legislative session, we were much better prepared and able to support all the complex bills that were coming out and all the complex analysis that needed to be done with regards to that, and not just support that for the city of Boise, but finding that we're playing a role locally, regionally, and statewide and helping with that analysis and that support as well. The next year, again, we'll be continuing to focus on process, people, and technology. The resources that we've requested are continue to address service levels and the growth that we're seeing at the city. As we grow staff at the city, we in other departments that has implications for the internal service departments and our ability to service those departments. So we need to add staff to address those workloads and maintain those service levels, as well as we just want to continue to enhance our capabilities. We find that we spend a lot of time in DFA providing basic financial information across the city to the different departments and the managers in those departments so they can manage their budgets. And we'd like to get better about having some self-service options there, dashboards, and enhancing reporting capabilities so that managers can access that information themselves more quickly and more timely, and be able to do more decision support on the fly. A lot of the last year has taught us that when you have a lot of vacancies and you have a lot of turnover, you're spending a lot of time training new staff, and you're spending a lot of time trying to fill holes with existing staff where people have left. And so we've recognized the importance of having standardizing documentation and procedures and having all that written down and available so that we can handle those shifts in our workforce and that turnover. And so we'll be continuing to focus on that in the next year, as well as continuing to do diligence on our ERP and whether we need to replace our ERP or upgrade. We're coming to the end of our current useful life of our current version of our ERP system. And so that's a decision that we'll have to be making fairly quickly here. And again, we want to continue to be able to develop our people and develop our processes and our technology as much as possible to continue to support any new initiatives that the mayor and city clerk have on new ordinances and license types as well. So that's what we'll also be focused on in the next year. Thanks.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thanks. First of all, I want to thank you and Eric and everyone for the really great work you did helping the various cities around the state understand the property tax issue and be able to respond to it. Although we didn't prevail with a homeowners exemption increase, I think the information was incredibly valuable and forestalled maybe some other legislation that would have made things worse. So thanks. Really appreciate it. My question actually is, I guess, somewhat of a comment. Given the staffing that we're facing right now, given all of the things that we're asking staff to do, given all of the issues involving inflation and others, is there any way, I recognize that our ERP probably wasn't the best choice when we made it. We probably do need to upgrade, but having lived through that, I don't know that we want to go through it in a time when we're not fully staffed and when we have all these other things going on. So my question is there a way to extend for a year so that we can have some time to really prepare for that change? Because as I remember the last time, it was difficult. I know we lent audit staff to it. We, as a city council, there were, and it took a year and some to even really get back up and running fully. So I understand that we probably need to do it, but boy, it gives me heartburn to think about doing it at this time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Councilmember Clegg. I feel the exact same way as you do. It gives me a little bit of heartburn and sleepless nights thinking about implementing a new ERP system as well. That's why we are doing our due diligence right now. We've been doing ongoing for this past fiscal year as well, is we want to make sure that we're very, very well prepared. Myself, Sarah, Alex, others, the mayor's office, we're meeting pretty regularly. We have a team to understand exactly what implementation will look like, how many backfill resources we'll need, when is the right time to do it, when are we prepared, when would we be successful. We need to do a lot of process work ahead of time, a lot of foundational building ahead of time. And we're starting to work on a lot of that now to make sure that we are prepared when the time is right. Thanks.
Thank you. Alex is up. Yep, it's Alex. Alex Winkler with an update from IT. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Alex Winkler. I'm the Chief Information Officer and the Director of the IT Department. Over the last couple of years, we have focused on a new staffing framework. What we've tried to do is transition from a jack of all trades to a specialized model to offer jobs and positions that are more in line with industry standards, to modernize the jobs in the IT department. So what you've approved over recent history in the last 3 years is those more specialized positions. What we focused on this last year is hiring to those, and then in turn, transitioning work to those. So that's just been such a gift that the city has provided for not only our department, but for the city as a whole, because we've been able to put that staffing model in place. Not only that, but you've also approved augmentation money. So for our data and dev teams, we had a lot of tech debt. So what we've been able to do, because we've hired some contract support, is to really work on some of that tech debt and have contractors do work and have our teams focused on the real foundational learning their new portfolios.
Madam
So-
Mayor, Alex, can you just tell us what tech debt is?
Oh,
It's
yes,
not a
thank
term
you.
I've heard before.
Oh, I appreciate that. Technical debt. So what that means is, and I appreciate that. What that means is, you know how if you were to be just not doing the regular upkeep regularly over time, it just kind of piles up. Like, what if you just kept putting stuff from your house into your garage and it just keeps piling up and you never take care of it? That's to me kind of how I see tech debt, is just that piled up massive foundational work that must be kept up year over year. But when you're so busy working on projects and new, sometimes you don't allocate enough time to do that kind of foundational work. So that's what we've been able to do with the augmentation money that we've been provided by council over the last year. Thank you. Any other questions? Sometimes I use terms. I'm working on it. Thank you. So we've transitioned in this year to hiring those positions as well as transitioning work to these specialized positions. We've also been working on the city broadband work. As you well know, we recently, 2 weeks ago, updated you on that. So some of your investment went to a feasibility study of what would it take to build a city broadband network. In addition to that, we've been working on a hybrid working environment. So what that means is that we've normalized home equipment issue. We have city employees that work as much from home, or maybe 3 days here, 2 days at home, which means that you have to have a workspace that allows for that. So we've normalized that, updated all of our conference rooms, and are continuing to improve that to allow for hybrid meetings all the time, every day, as well as improved and changed our help desk support model in response to the hybrid working environment. As well, our facilities team has been hard at work over the last year or so, providing the IT department, the third floor just over there, with a new flexible workspace. So it's a bit of a pilot project. And what we've done is completely reconfigure the IT department to allow for more of a hybrid working, where we focus on concentration at home and collaboration in the office. So we're trying to balance that and really work on innovative ways to work in the IT department, and then with our cross-functional teams to really optimize concentration and collaboration. We continue to modernize and improve our cyber protection, as we talked about last week at work session, including endpoint protection, updated cybersecurity insurance, penetration testing where people try to get in unsuccessfully, thankfully, tabletop exercises to improve and continue to train to maintain our cyber posture. As well, our infrastructure team's been hard at work updating our wireless, like Wi-Fi access points, as well as the airport data center. We've also been working on application modernization, and we will always. That is one of our most important jobs in the IT department, is to constantly look and scan the horizon and meet our business needs. So just a few highlights on application modernization. We've continued to enhance and work with contractors to do so, our permitting and licensing system. We've been working on better software asset management so that we understand how many licenses we need to manage, what the cost of those different software assets are. We've we've extended the reach of our maintenance management system called ViewWorks. We've been collaborating with the HR department and the finance department on a time and attendance system all year. And as well been working on the due diligence that Linda mentioned for the ERP and HRMS systems. So all told, we've been participating in 48 different projects that required IT resources this year. So thank you for your investment in us. It will continue to bear fruit. This next year, now that we get the humans in the new positions, it's brand new work, right? So it's really important that we create the operational processes and really make sure that we are wickedly transparent and visible in terms of what are things costing, what work are we doing. So our focus over this next year with respect to transparency, predictability, and visibility are to improve how do we manage different enhancement requests? Like, hey, can we have a widget to do that? Can we have a report to do that? We stand to improve in that. How do we manage our backlogs and make them visible to the departments that need work from us? How do we develop roadmaps of these improvements, these business system improvements that we need to do over the next 5 years? We're really going to focus on making that transparent and managing things, our systems over their life cycle. We've had a lot of emphasis on the new. We need to have a lot of emphasis on that which we pay for every year and sustain and figure out how do we modernize those over time. That will be a focus this year, as well as really understanding the total cost of ownership, okay? It's licenses, how many humans are working on a particular system across all of our different departments, not just IT. So that will be a focus this year. We will always be enhancing cybersecurity. And as we talked about 2 weeks ago, we continue to develop our broadband knowledge and work on a master plan for that, as well as starting to get in the business of what are some smart city applications of our broadband and internet that we need for the city. So we'll continue to work with other departments on that. Not only that, but we will be accounting for increased software and hardware costs. I intend to, over time, have an increased level of transparency when it comes to software costs, whether they be hardware or software. We will be investing a little bit more in licenses, taking on more sustainment costs in the IT department, GIS servers, PCs and laptops, all of those different hardware pieces. As we see inflation go up, the cost of replacing that is also going up. And we will be transitioning the sustainment of new software to IC support as needed. And then finally, with workforce development, just because we have new people in new positions doesn't mean they automatically magically know everything they need to. We will be focusing on continued workforce development, specialized trainings for the different systems that they're taking on, a couple promotions that have long been overdue, and certifications for their new roles. So that is what we've asked the council to help us invest in next year. Any questions for IT?
Madam Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Alex. So just a couple of questions. With more folks doing that hybrid model of work, what does IT support look like?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, it looks like people at the city, not just walking into City Hall West and a human walking to a desk. How do we communicate over Teams? How do we submit tickets? How do we have a conversation over the phone? Do they have the phone in the number to call? So it just means a more flexible model of multi-channels coming into the help desk that we have. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it took a little while for me to get some IT support, so it just kind of brought it up that I thought, gosh, I wonder what that looks like now with more people working from home, and just wondering if we have adequate support for that so that people can keep their pace of work. The other question I had about that hybrid model is, as it is with any technology, it's supposed to save us time. It's supposed to be efficient, but what we have found is the more technology we have in our homes and in our lives, the more stimulus we have, the more stimuli we have, the less we relax, the less opportunity to decompress and reset as human beings. Are we going to be mindful of that, of where we help our employees stay healthy? I don't know if that's something that would be done with HR, just so that work does end for them and it's not something that's never ending and the deadline is nebulous and perhaps affecting our retention numbers. I'm just wanting to bring that up as something to consider.
And I'll jump in here. I think that's a great suggestion and thing to consider, both work between IT and HR and other departments.
Thank you.
And I know that there's some things there that probably information that could be shared at a different time. Great, thanks. Right, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. It's good to see you again. My question, and I appreciate your comment that you intend to make the software costs more transparent. My question has to do with that. As we've seen all of the software go to subscription service, my assumption is that that is increasing our costs. And are there any collectives or any ways to kind of ameliorate that growth in costs over time that you know of?
The short answer is application rationalization. Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg, thank you for the question. As we make things transparent over the next year, as we really understand our cost, that's not the end of it. What we need to then do is analyze that and take action. So the first step is knowing what it is and how it's changed over time. It might be that next year is our first baseline, and then we continue to contract that over time. One of the things we've been talking a lot about as directors is how do we make decisions about individual software decisions that make sense in the context of the larger city? Over time, the IT department has worked with each individual department. Okay, what we need to do is have more enterprise governance and bring that decision-making together so that when we decide to invest in a new point solution, we look at the enterprise and say, hey, maybe 3 of us shouldn't buy a different texting tool. Maybe we should buy an enterprise Twilio license or whatever texting solution we do, and then apply it city-wise. That alone will help us reduce cost. And we aim to get there by not only establishing transparency, but looking at how do we do enterprise governance for different like clusters of technologies.
Thank you. I appreciate that and look forward to seeing some of the numbers when you get them.
Thanks, Alex. All right, next up, we've got legal with Jamie Sullivan. And after Jamie, we'll take a quick break.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I'm Jamie Sullivan, the city attorney, and I'm here to brief you on the state of the legal department for the city of Boise. Again, I'm a lawyer, technology, IT is not my right arrow. Oh, you mean right there, right in front of me? Woohoo. All right, I need to stop touching.
Yeah, I gotcha. I should have just done it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, well, let's try this again. I am here to now finally give you a briefing on the state of the legal department. I am happy to report, unlike my IT capabilities, we have been able to forward a structure and a restructuring plan for the legal department, taking advantage of the new FTEs that were approved last year in the budget and leveraging some salary savings from some retirements in the department as well. We were able to restructure all 3 divisions. That's public safety, the municipal team, and the criminal division, and able to improve workflow, maximize services and efficiencies, and provide career path development for our staff and attorneys. I'm also happy to report that the case management system is on track for implementation in spring of 23. Again, that is the #1 city priority for the last 2 years on the work plan. As the criminal system has been sunsetting, we were able to leverage that opportunity to not only get a new criminal case management system, but to include the municipal and public safety divisions as well. And finally, as part of our accomplishments, I do make the joke that legal is at our best when you don't see us. But as you can see from these numbers, we really do have a strong impact on our community. Over 63 ordinances and 102 resolutions, for 4,000 public records requests processed, and attending and advising over 100 board, council, and commission meetings, in addition to over 12,000 misdemeanors and 3,500 infractions that were processed by our department last year. So as the city grows, so do the needs of legal to ensure quality services to the department, to the city, and to our community. As the airport expands, as water renewal moves forward, and other work plans and initiatives, the need for an additional municipal attorney is warranted to continue to support those endeavors. Also requesting a paralegal to provide support services, not only to our attorneys, but also to the city's systemic demands that our paralegals support at this time. Also asking for consideration of a victim witness coordinator. If you look at the 12,000 misdemeanors that we processed last year and 3,500 infractions, many of those crimes do involve victims, whether it be theft, battery, vandalism, or alcohol and drug related crimes. BPD does an excellent job of providing victim services during an investigation, but one does not stop being a victim once it hits the court system. So this position would reach out to those individuals to provide support services, court dates and status updates on the cases, and also coordinate restitution so we can ensure that we can make these individuals as whole as possible. Again, we are here to ensure that the people at their most vulnerable, when they are the most vulnerable, are also able to access the resources that they need, not only for our own responsibility, but also our responsibilities under the Victim Rights Act. Finally, our ask is for an investigation fund. As you know, there's been an increase in litigation, not only in numbers, but also in complexity. This individual and this fund would help support a review of the facts and circumstances that support some of the litigation that we face. This fund also would be accessible to investigations outside of direct litigation, for example, ADA complaints, discrimination complaints, and an overflow or any conflict with HR, fire, or police. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Jamie. I applaud the desire to put in place a victim witness coordinator. I would ask if we could make sure that that's somebody that we would ask to have bilingual abilities, just because those situations, as you know, can be so traumatic, and then to have the difficulty of not being able to communicate with somebody who's in a position of wanting to help. I think it would be great. I don't know the legalities of putting a requirement on that, but I've been the bilingual person everywhere I've been. So I know it's been helpful to have somebody who's able to speak more than one language, as you know.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Jamie, last year's budget had new positions in your department. Are they all filled now?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bajan, yes, we have
Great.
one active vacancy.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Mhm.
Thank you. So Jamie, you cited the numbers of services in what you did this year. Is that on par with what we've faced in the past? Is it growth? Is it are infractions keeping up, or are they declining like they used to be? What's the trend?
And Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, I will be happy to get back to you with those results. I do know, especially in our criminal system, since we've had that system, I can provide those facts.
Okay, that'll be helpful. And then question on the investigator. I think it sounds like a good idea. I'm wondering what we do today in risk management. How do we investigate? Are you going to coordinate with them? Just as you move this forward, bring us more detail on again, how it works across the enterprise. You mentioned some other areas that they could investigate, but I wonder if we already have some investigation going on across the enterprise and if we can utilize that or at least coordinate it better.
Thank you. And Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg, yes, it's my understanding that there are several contracts. This is an attempt to formalize and centralize the process so we can ensure consistency and efficiency.
Great. Yeah, just bring us those details. I mean, I figured it was probably some contracts that we've been doing and we'd, be replacing those, but I'd like to know
Absolutely.
that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I just had a similar question to the council president on growth of some of the services throughout the years, specifically related to PRRs. It would be just really interesting to kind of see how that's trending. So.
No, and Council Pro Tem Whittington, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, absolutely. We have had a significant uptake in PRRs. Those numbers I'll be happy to provide.
Further questions? All right. Thanks, Jamie. We are going to take a 10-minute break and we will be back. And there's even a slide for that, I believe.
If I can find it.
The
There we
sli-
go.
The slide needs music embedded in it, but here we go.
No, I'm gonna give you specific names. Everywhere. Included next to, and then your manage I can take them. So it's so. Yeah. We'll make it into a picture. Continue to be amused by Tim's. Oh, I have to listen to it. Funny, it's Tim. And you know George loves Tim.
Oh, I bet he did.
All day, every day.
Oh, that's
You're
funny.
killing me.
All right, I'm gonna try to get everybody back.
No, I'm very careful to feel it out, feel it out.
If Courtney says anything, I'm gonna route her to you.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna go ahead and move off of the 10-minute break slide. So come on up. First up, we have Planning and Development Services with Tim Keene.
Mayor, members of council, thank you. Go through these slides quickly here. In the current fiscal year, some things to talk about that are highlights of what the planning department's working on and that were part of last year's budget include the new zoning ordinance, of course, which has been ongoing for 18 months or so. But this current fiscal year was a heavy time for progress on the new zoning ordinance. In addition, the first time the city has contracted with a private company to help with permitting services. Given the huge volume of permits that we're processing right now, we thankfully have engaged a private company to initially just help with our plan review of submitted plans for permitting, which is of course, a big part of the process. And so we have a private company helping us with that for the first time to improve our customer service. In addition, in this past year, of course, investments in housing, and those include the addition of 4 staff members within our housing and community development team to help on all kinds of policy and programmatic work on the housing side of things. Council made that investment in the last year. And then also some new developments, including Moda Franklin and State and Arthur and Celebration Acres. I note those 3, which are on the map that you have here, Moda Franklin being number 2 on this map, State and Arthur being number 8, and Celebration Acres number 6. I'll mention that Moda Franklin in particular is just a wonderful example of getting a lot out of the city's investment when it comes to affordable housing. In that particular case, Moda Franklin consists of a total of 205 dwelling units. 184 of those are affordable for people making 60% or less of area median income. Moda Franklin also includes 20 units of permanent supportive housing, and our total investment in that, so 184 units, including some permanent supportive housing, is less than $30,000 per unit, which is a great value for that investment in affordable housing, as good as any you'll see anywhere. So that was a lot of progress there this year. In the coming year, we want to continue with the permitting enhancements. I spoke to council, of course, during your work session last week and spoke to some of these things, including the work that we'll be doing in the current fiscal year to really actually expand our engagement with a private company to essentially critique and change our processes to the degree they need changing. We are committed to seeking to do this work better than anyone, and that involves getting down into the weeds of how our processes work as it relates to permitting and how they engage with other departments and other agencies that are part of the process of permitting any construction in the city. So we have a group of staff that is very dedicated and excited about evaluating how we work such that we can change it to do better. And obviously the whole purpose there is to enhance our customer service. Also in the current fiscal year, we'll continue with the new zoning ordinance, and we're going to get started as fast as we can to really concentrate on the city that we're seeking to build in Boise. And the design for Boise will be a very interesting process for the community to participate in to clarify how this growth that we're seeing will create a better city in the ways in which residents of this city want it to be, how we can achieve the best city at this period of rapid growth that we're seeing, using growth really as our mechanism for building a city that achieves all the things that we want to for Boise. And then using the zoning code, of course, as a way of aligning our regulations to that future city we're seeking to build. Then some additional housing investments in the coming fiscal year, which would include, and I presented last week, of course, that snapshot of the kind of full picture around what we see the public investments would be in achieving our housing strategy. So we'll be coming back to you during the year as it relates to specific projects and funding for those. Also on that snapshot I gave you last week included some additional funding for Our Path Home in serving the homeless population in the city. And then also adding, what we're proposing this year is to add another position within planning that would be someone dedicated to assisting any affordable housing development as it navigates through the permitting process. The point, of course, being we want to concentrate on helping people that are building affordable housing get through the permitting, the entitlement and permitting process as quickly as they can. So we are making that our highest priority. We have two project managers right now in the planning department who do a phenomenal job helping projects get through the process. They're just overwhelmed. We have so much happening in the city and many priorities, honestly, that relate to economic development and services that we want to see built in the city. So we want to add a person that's dedicated to affordable housing. And that is I am not going to speak about the library. I will stick to planning and answer any questions you have about that.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. I know we got a lot of information last week, so I appreciate this as a bookend. I'm trying to get a handle on how much money is currently allocated in the land trust and then how much we've spent of that. And you probably don't have that off the top of your head, but if you could give me some perspective on that, that would be helpful.
Well, what I could give you some perspective on is what was spent in the current fiscal year, and then what we're anticipating in the coming fiscal year. So in the current fiscal year, we were right at about $7 million total, and that was for projects that were ones that I just spoke to, Moda Franklin, State and Arthur, and then Malad. That is in the current year. And then in the coming year, we're anticipating something in the neighborhood of $5 million. We will come to you for that when we're ready for it as it relates to specific projects. And included in that, what we'll bring to you, of course, is the funding strategy for any affordable housing related project that we bring to you. And I mentioned that just because the funds could come from different places. As we discussed last week, this isn't all general fund resources. We have federal funds that we use and other sources of funding. So when we come to you during the current year for additional funding, we will bring a funding package to you at that time.
Madam Mayor, quick follow-up. Of the 7 million that was in the previous budget, how much of that has been spent? And then is the 5 in addition? So it'd be like a total of 12, or is that separate? Like there was 7 and then we're
Well, in the current fiscal year, we've spent, there was a total of 7, as I said. Of that, 1.3 million has been spent. And the rest of it has been encumbered. The 5 million in the current year would be additional funding. So it would be in addition to the 5 million. Yeah.
okay.
And one of the reasons I presented that full picture to you last week is so that you could see the extent of where we're headed with this. I really don't want to keep coming to you with, $1.2 million here or 5 million there or 7 million here without you seeing the full breadth of what we're expecting to bring to you at some time.
Great. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for keeping it short. We did get to hear from you for quite a while last week, so I appreciate that. One thing that you haven't talked about much yet is your vision especially for comprehensive planning and the resources needed to get to the vision that you talk about. And so wondering, given that there really are relatively few empty positions in PDS, whether you envision that the comp planning unit particularly is staffed appropriately or staffed well enough to be able to pull off the things that you're envisioning with really trying to figure out what kind of place we want to be.
Yes, thank you for asking that question. We do have a position in this coming year fiscal year 23 budget, an additional person for that group. I do feel as though that group, the planners, we have some really, as you know, highly skilled people there who have been working substantially on the zoning rewrite, but will also be working very much on the design for Boise, and they do need assistance. So we're looking at how best to organize that group. It's been current planning and comprehensive planning, as you know, for a while. There was a time in Boise when it was not that way. It was just one group. So we're evaluating the organization of that group such that we're getting the highest quality projects out of our entitlement process, but also that we are able to accomplish what we must this year as it relates to the design for Boise. So we have one additional position and we're looking at how best to organize that group so we can be successful in all these things.
Great, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. I had the opportunity to briefly chat with you at an event not too long ago and really enjoyed our conversation. Appreciate the background that you come from in doing this work. And one of the things that you said that I really admired and appreciated was that in your previous gig, DEI was discussed about everything that your city did. And I appreciate having somebody in your position come from that type of background where it's just normal. It's not unusual. It's not an add-on. And, you know, Councilmember Willits and I recently had the opportunity to tour the Irma Heyman House. I think my other colleagues did as well. And it was wonderful to have Arts and History share with us how that part of Boise was shaped. And it was policy-wise. You know, people of color didn't choose to live on Ash Street and River Street. That's where they could live. That's where they could purchase homes. And as we move forward with the zoning code rewrite, I feel very confident in having someone like you at the head of this department and being able to be mindful of that, you know, we don't have overt racist language now, but we can still lean towards those biases if we're not mindful of it. And so again, I really appreciate that you have that vision, that you come from that background of appreciating that we talk about these things openly. And that's the only way we can make sure that we correct the mistakes of the past. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Sanchez.
Right, thank you, Tim. Next up, we've got Jessica Dorr with the library.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. It is always a pleasure to be here talking about the public library. I'm going to talk to you about some of the focus that we've had that has really bridged both FY22, the year that we're currently in, and leading us forward. And when I think about the investments and the impact that we had, I really think of them in three areas. We've been focusing on improving access to materials. We've been focused on increasing our programs and services. In partnership with many of our city departments, we've been focusing on having safe, welcoming facilities for all. So when I think about improving access to materials, why that is so important to us is because we saw during the pandemic when we had to drastically limit our services, a real shift. And I'm really proud to see that our numbers are going back up in terms of usage. And a very important marker that we saw in 2021 is that our youth materials surpassed our adult materials in circulation. And that to me is just a remarkable moment in time where we've seen growth and we've seen that resurgence in the population that benefits the most from our library services. Access to their storytelling, access to different opportunities for our homeschool community, for our youth and students. Seeing that growth has really energized our entire workforce. Part of what we've done is also invest in our technology because we've got some great new tools. This is a screenshot of Idaho, an Idaho library app that you can use to put materials on hold, to do self-checkout, to search in our catalog and look at our events. We see so much of our users wanting to have a fluid transition between the online and the in-person experience, and having this app has enabled that. We've also really benefited in that increased programs and services from our continued partnership with Parks and Rec, which has made our story times available not just in our locations, but in our community parks. Boise is just such a beautiful location, and having the ability to have that outdoor and indoor programming year round has really enabled us to reach more kids and families. We've also really focused on helping provide a community for everyone to live, work, and play. We've done a lot of partnership work with Central District Health, with Jesse Tree, Our Path Home. They're having pop-up meetings in our facilities and health screening, because we're able to help reach a demographic and able to have people come into a location and have that sort of wraparound service. Come in for health screening and we'll get you some materials on how to, healthy recipes or how to take care of your family. And we're also doing more small business support with our information and home-based services team. And finally, I'm just so thrilled that you all approved earlier this year a new position for the library, which is a mental health coordinator, and that person will start on May 31st. And when they're on board, we'll make sure you get a chance to meet them. And then also we've been really focused on, having safe, welcoming facilities for all. You heard about the partnership that we have with the security team that has really enabled us to work to have that facility so that my staff can focus on providing library services and know that we've got a security team that works with this holistically and is part of our team. And then with IT, we've really been able to increase our broadband by having Wi-Fi outside of all our locations. During the pandemic, we also put in outdoor furniture because we see how people are using our library facilities indoors and outdoors. As we go forward this year, we are still with those same area of focus. So in our improved access to materials, you'll see some requests that we have. One for what we call an ILS discovery layer. And I was told a library terminology is very particular. It's an enhanced catalog search so that when you are searching for materials, people want to, want to be able to do that on their own. This is a tool that will help enable that. And then we're also looking at an automated sorter that will reduce some of the time that staff actually need to move books around, which enables us to have more of that public interaction. It's a much higher use of their time by engaging with the public as opposed to moving books from cart to cart. We are right now working with our Board of Trustees on a new strategic plan. And so the increased programs and services will have an area of focus as we look at what are the things that the community wants us to do to provide for them. And then we're also really focused on that safe, welcoming facilities. Particularly, you'll see some investments at our downtown location. When there was the project that would replace that library, there hadn't been investments in that building rightly. Now we are needing to make some of those investments. And what I'm excited about is we're going to prioritize, obviously, our ADA compliance, but that youth service, that library is where we see families growing up, kids coming in. This is the first library that they have been to. So a lot of the investments you'll see on the first floor are focused on, making that an accessible building, but really prioritizing our youth programming and how we service our youth. And then also that will have what we're trying to do is over time, move our staff as far up the building. So we're going to do some fourth floor staff workspace, because the more we can do public space on first, second, and third, the more we'll be able to meet the demand of our growing community. And with that, thank you for your investment in the library.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jessica, thank you. That's all so exciting. I just want to highlight something. The last time we were all as a group over at Hillcrest, I happened to use the ladies' room. I just want to applaud you for using every space possible to do community outreach. I was blown away by being in the ladies' room, and there was so much information in there, which I think is great for those folks who might be inhibited from approaching an individual to ask for information. So I just really appreciate you using every possible opportunity to reach out to our community to give them information that they need. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Sanchez. For those of you who may not have been in the women's restroom at Hillcrest, what the council member is referring to is the fact that we do have a lot of posted information for people that may not, as you said, may not be comfortable, but are, that's where we put information about housing insecurity, about domestic violence support organizations, the Idaho Suicide Prevention Hotline, the Period Project. It is a safe, you're enclosed in a stall, and so you can copy down a number. The other thing that my staff has done is put together a bookmark of resources that you may not want to be seen asking a staff person about. And you can just go by a desk and pick it up, and it'll give you call numbers if you're interested in a specific topic, but don't feel comfortable having someone overhear you asking about that. It really is important to us that people get the resources and the help they need. And sometimes having a safe way for people to self-find that is really impactful. So thank you.
Yes. I mean, our family are like library super users. We check out so many books. We've saved probably tens of thousands of dollars using the library. So thank you for all of the service you've given us, from like our kids being little toddlers to now. And I just want to give a big shout out for anyone who was not able to attend the summer reading and learning kickoff on Saturday at Jump. It was tremendous. There were so many people there, just dozens of organizations, kids playing in bands, librarians reading books, a cowboy reading a book to kids, sidewalk chalk, lawn games. Like it was so well attended and so, just so successful in connecting people to the various ways that kids can stay engaged during the summer. It was really cool. So congratulations. And I hope that that group is able to come back together next year to do it again.
Thank you, Council Pro Tem Woodings. That was a fabulous party to really celebrate summer reading and to make reading a fun daily habit, because we just know the outcomes that children that are able to continue to read at grade level and just what that means to them for their life and their ability to continue their education and learn. It was really fun. We actually signed up more than 330 individuals for summer reading this year. We issued 80 new library cards. So it really was a great outreach opportunity for us. Summer reading actually officially kicks off tomorrow with the end of the Boise School District year. You're all welcome to our downtown location. We'll have another party, but I really appreciate it. And I hope, selfishly, I hope your son appreciated that we had less speeches this year than last.
He did. And actually he made me, we were riding our bikes through downtown. He was like, let's just ride through to make sure that there aren't speeches. Cause I told him there weren't going to be speeches and he didn't believe me until we rode through. I was like, no, this is more like a party. And then he was into it. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I was going to apologize for missing the party. I was out of town, but my grandson was in one of the bands and he had a blast. And so did my husband watching and lots of the other kids. So congratulations on a great kickoff. My question has to do with the strategic plan. I am interested in how far along you are and when are you planning to come to council and let us give us our input on the process.
Thank you, Council President Clegg. That's a really important process that we're going through right now. And I think it is a great question. We do want to have council input. The Board of Trustees really encouraged us to take the time we need to do this well. And one of the early findings we had was needing to start with staff engagements. I have a workforce that has a considerable amount of new staff and staff that have not done strategic planning post COVID. And so we've really thoughtfully built a schedule. We will come back to you later this year. I will come back probably, I'll write a note about come back with more specifics about the timing on that. Because we do want your input on, our sort of baseline findings and then what that means for us going forward in terms of our planning and programming.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'm so sorry I wasn't at the big kickoff, so I don't know. Did we have our artists who were selected to design the new library cards? Were they participating in that event?
Councilmember Sanchez, I don't know if they were there. I don't.
I think it would be a
I
really
know.
great way to get people to sign up for cards. Plus, those artists that were selected, they're such neat people. And I bet they would be into it if we did something maybe with arts and history and them to, get more people to get those cards.
Thank you. That's
Thanks,
a wonderful
Jessica.
suggestion.
Next up, we've got Doug Holloway with Parks and Rec.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, City Council members. Thank you for having all us department directors here today to give our presentations on where we've been and where we're anticipating going this next year. So just a quick rundown of some of our recent investments. As we came to you a couple of weeks ago with an IBC using our foothills and open space levy funding to construct the Hawkins Trailhead and 5.9 mile loop is something that we're very excited about. And the response we've been getting from the public also is equally as enthusiastic, providing access into 3 different reserves that we did not previously have access to. So this is really going to be an exciting addition to the preservation of our foothills and our recreational opportunities up there. Some of the other improvements we did, we've done a number of Greenbelt projects this past year. Probably the most visible one would be that Americana to Capitol, where we replaced some much deteriorating asphalt with our concrete surfacing. And so to weather all of the concerns our users have in being shut out of that location for several months, I'm glad to report that many are very happy now that they have a nice smooth surface to be able to utilize in one of the most popular parts of our Greenbelt program. We are embarking on a Julia Davis roadway improvement. So this will be on the east end off of Myrtle. This has been in our master plan for several years. It also will include adding an additional restroom and pavilion. If you're familiar with Ag Pavilion, which is in between, it's on the west end of Julia Davis. It's kind of in between the band shell and the zoo. Very popular reservation site. The whole western and northern end of Julia Davis is really a extremely popular location in the park for events and activities. So our hope is that by improving the roadway and by adding this access with restroom facilities and a reservable, very nice shelter in that location, that will push some of our events that we have been really shoehorning in on that northern end over to that east end. So we're excited for that project to come to fruition and it's the first of, I think, 3 phases of roadway improvements that we'll be embarking on over the next several years at Julia Davis. The America the Beautiful initiative, this is Mayor McLean's sign on in 2020. And this is essentially to preserve 30% of our land and water mass, our natural land and water mass in the city limits of Boise by the year 2030. It is a worldwide initiative, but Mayor McLean has adopted this locally. So we started with a baseline in 2020 of 13% of our total land mass within the city limits. It starts to meet that 30 for 30 goal. And our internal goal was if we could do 2% every year, we obviously would exceed that 30% by the year 2030. And as you can see, we are on track through 2022 to exceed that goal. So we're at 17% in 2022, and we're not done with 2022 yet. We do have a couple of other projects that I think will have some influence on the America the Beautiful initiative as well. And then near and dear to Council President Clegg's heart is the City of Trees Challenge. And the success we're having with that. There are 2 additions that we've added to that this year. We've added tree captains, which are essentially neighborhood advocates in areas of the community where we have a little less of the tree canopy than what we need to see in that area. So our tree captains act as advocates in that area, in those neighborhoods, to try to encourage neighborhood residents to buy and plant trees or get trees from us to plant. We also started a program where we offer $50 tree coupons to a number of nurseries in town. So if you buy a tree, you get a $50 off. And then we just ask that you make sure you go online and then chart that on our website so that we can add that to our list of success in growing our canopy in the community. The Pathways program, which Madam Mayor, you and council members adopted several months ago. We're working closely with a number of other department stakeholders. We have created an execution strategy for this. We also have created a list of priorities based upon, I believe there was 110 different recommended connections over 80 plus miles in that plan. And so we've sifted through the plan and really have created a list of what our priorities are. And we'll be coming back to the council with an updated strategy for your review and approval. And we hope that relatively soon, hopefully our fingers are crossed in the next several weeks, that we'll come back also with one of our first connections in the city under this plan. Water quality projects that we have undertaken this past year. We have done a number of riparian projects along the Boise River. In fact, we just awarded to the Eagle Audubon Society a Foothills Open Space and Clean Water grant to do a riparian project out in the Barber Valley. And with our partners in Public Works, I'm here to say for the first time in 2021, since Esther Simplot Park has been open, and I believe we cut the ribbon on that in 2015 or 2016, the first summer, last summer, we did not close any of the ponds due to water quality issues. And a big shout out to Steve Burgos and his team. Engineered a plan. It took a couple of years to get done, but essentially was bringing more water from the Boise River through additional water rights, through Quinn's, through the two ponds at Esther. And that additional flow has made a world of difference. We still have some algae issues that we deal with, but those are just warning signs. They're not, if our public works team tests that daily, if they're not toxic, we just recommend be careful. But we didn't have to close it because of algae, and certainly the E. coli numbers have been very, very low. So it's working. We still have to finish this plan up right now. The exit water coming out of the second pond goes into the Farmers Union Canal, and we're working on a construction project that would actually take that to the Boise River. So there are some permitting issues that we're working through on that. And then Hillcrest Community Center. This is our Kid City after school program. We were supposed to open this in August of 21, but lack of staffing did not allow us to be able to do that. And it's come hell or high water, we're opening this in August of this year for sure. There is a high need at the Hillcrest Elementary School for this, and we believe we do have a staffing model in place that we'll be able to finally get this open after a year delay. And then I just put the zoo, golf courses, and ice world here at the bottom, particularly the zoo and golf courses. And as Madam Mayor and council members may be aware, and I'm sure you are, we had record numbers this past year at the zoo, and we continue to see those numbers almost weekly continue to rise. And our golf courses, for the first time in the history that we've had both courses exceeded a net profit right around $1 million last year. So that money gets to go into a reserve account that the golf courses then can use for development, internal development, and pay for their own capital costs. So I just want to really give a shout out to the operations at those two locations and how successful they have been, but also shout out to our users and our citizens for not forgetting us during 2020 and into 2021 and coming back in full force. And then Ice World, and I'll address that in the next slide. So obviously, we are adding more sites to our inventory, and we already know we're getting increased use of the current sites that we already have. And so we do know we are going to need additional resources, and it's mainly in that cleaning area. It's mainly in receptacle care. It's in cleaning restrooms. It's in just keeping the parks at that A+ level that that mayor and council want to see. And so we will be asking for additional custodial resources that also act as our event support staff as well. And You go to Julia Davis or Rand Morrison Park on any given Saturday, the places are packed with events, fun runs, all kinds of things are happening. And we literally are almost at our full capacity to be able to handle more events. We're starting to tell event organizers that are new coming to our community that does a Wednesday morning sound good to you, because our weekends are really getting packed. And so we're seeing that in the wear and tear and just the general upkeep of the facility. So we do need some additional support there. Hopefully, if approved, we can get that additional support hired as well. And then just Ice World, as mayor and council are aware, we came back with a different model in when we reopened Ice World. And it was really a model that focused mainly on the ice type of season, which is an October through a March season. And then we would use the rest of the year to basically rent ice and do some very, very low level programming with just the existing full-time staff we have, and not bring in temporary or seasonal help during the summertime. And I'm just very proud of the work that our team has done out there. I think we have somewhere around $800,000 that we've been able to bank between October and March. And so the objective of Ice World, again, Madam Mayor and council members, as you're aware, is to create that quasi enterprise model where we will not ever not serve everyone. We will continue to do that. No one will ever be turned away without an ability to pay or utilize our services. Having said that, we also, though, are created a revenue generating or for-profit model with Ice World. So we don't pay our indirect costs to the city, but all of our direct costs now are being paid by Ice World. So all of their capital costs. So if there is a need for a new roof, we need to buy a new roof. It has to come out of the profits of the facility. If we need a new Zamboni, it has to come out of the profits of the facility. And so again, our hope was coming into the summer, we would be somewhere in that $500,000 range, and we're above that. So the model is working. And again, I would say to those that were not happy that Ice World closed almost for 2 full years, they came back. And the worry we had was all those kids we taught and learned to skate and we're preparing to become our future figure skaters and our future hockey players, that we would lose them. And our Learn to Skate program right now has waiting lists through the entire summer. So we weren't planning on doing Learn to Skate in the summertime. We were only going to do it during the wintertime. Well, we have such a demand, we're going to do it in the summertime as well, and it'll be taught by our full-time staff. But as a result of this, we do need to add a ice maintenance tech that we will pay for out of our revenue streams, out of our profits from Ice World. Code for a maintenance tech is a Zamboni driver. Basically, at the end of the day, they cut ice for us and do other maintenance duties. And then finally, to ensure that we're meeting our Association of Zoological standards, we are asking for some additional help in our animal care and customer service. And we have created a model to show for the zoo our size, the number of exhibits that we have, how many staff should we have. And we have learned through this process that we're a little bit short on a couple of areas, particular animal care and zookeepers. And so again, out of the success we're having at the zoo, we're proposing that we use our increased revenue to be able to pay for those additional staff members. So I will pause before I go to my side hustle.
Madam Mayor.
I've got council members Willits, then Clegg, then Sanchez.
First of all, thank you. I mean, we love our parks. That's one of the reasons that people live in Boise, and it's one of the reasons people live in the Treasure Valley. So thank you for making them beautiful, and we want more of them, obviously. I have a question from your longevity here. Have we ever considered contracting out custodial services, or is that something that's been done and then we found that it wasn't helpful?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Willits, actually we do a portion of that contract out. The problem we've ran into is we can't even find a contractor to do that. We actually had to get really super creative. We did find one that was willing to do it, but they didn't have the number of vehicles they needed to accommodate our needs. And so we have worked out an arrangement and changed an internal policy so that they can use our vehicles to be able to address the needs that we have. But we have been using a contractor for decades, I believe, for different services. But in particularly now where staffing is tough, but it's tough on the contractors too. They have a difficult time hiring staff as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Doug. Just a shout out to all the park staff who's helped so much on the City of Trees Challenge. It's been a success. You didn't say so, the mayor did in her speech. We're up to 13,000 trees planted, 13,500, which is pretty amazing given COVID and starting in this. And it's due to the staff at the Parks Department fully, because they've been wonderful. So thank you. Questions? We need a new facility at Warm Springs Golf Course. We're doing well now. What are the plans?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, we
And
are
probably,
actually.
I would say quick answer on this, but more
Yeah, and then-
detail
and bring it
can be
back.
provided.
Yeah.
So the
Just
quick
from a
answer
timing
is,
perspective.
thank you, Madam Mayor. We are working on a new design as we speak. And so we're hopeful that in the next couple of months, we can come back to council with that new design and kind of give you an update on where we're at with that.
Great. And then two quick ones. I'm glad to hear the Ice World model is working. I'm still interested, I think, as someone who's interested in climate change, understanding what we could do to Ice World to make that a more climate friendly facility. It uses a lot of energy. So, and I would augur that that doesn't need to come out of its own revenues, but just want to put that on the table for discussion at some point. And then finally, given the 10-minute walk and all the changes in the city, likely time to begin talking about facilities planning again as well.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Doug. I just had a quick question about programs. Do we have a youth golf program?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, we have a very robust youth golf program. The PGA tracks youth tee times throughout the country, and they're somewhere nationally around 3%, and ours are about 11%. So we have not only a lot of youth golfers, but we also have a very robust youth program.
And in terms of outreach to low-income communities, communities of color, where I don't think there's a lot of representation in those types of sports, are we doing anything in particular to reach out to those communities?
We need to do, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, we need to do better.
All right, let's do it, Doug.
Yep, we need to do better. We do have relationships, obviously, as you're aware, with our local school district and counselors. We provide clubs for kids. If they have their own clubs, we'll store them for them so that they can bike easily to the course. But we need to do a better job.
I would be happy to help with that. I know for myself, golf is very personal. My brother is an avid golfer, and it saved his life having golf as an option, but it took people in our community to be supportive of that interest. And he doesn't miss the Albertson Open now. But so thank you for that information, Doug.
And then
you,
we've got
Councilmember.
Councilmember Halliburton.
Yeah. Doug, great job to you and your team as usual. Know we're going to have a couple of conversations leading into, other budget and finance decisions with the parks. And one of them is the fees and stuff like that as well. One thing that might be helpful, I think, for me and maybe other council members to know is how many of our programs we're subsidizing as well, how many scholarships we're giving out, how many of the programs where we really never turn anybody away. I think it's such a great highlight. But as we're looking at the amount of funds that come in through our frees and through some of our other areas, knowing the amount that we subsidize or give out for free would be helpful as well.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, we will provide all that detail to you when we do the fees and charges hearing.
Madam Mayor, I just had a quick question actually related to Council President as far as facility. Oh, I think it's on. Yeah. As far as facilities planning and particularly related to capital and where we're kind of planning out some facilities over the next year for parks, park improvements, that type of thing.
So is that Madam Mayor, Council?
Just for like a follow-up in the future. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
A good conversation to have. All right, thank you. And now, hello again.
Yep. Hello again.
We've asked Doug to serve as interim director for arts and history, and I explained to staff as part of the team, a big part of the reason is because of the timing with the budget process. I wanted to make sure that the department was well represented with someone who has background in the city, has been a proven administrator, and can lead the team through the budget process that we're in now. But of course, the the larger hearing and then decisions and implementation after.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. I will say to start this off that you have a very solid team in arts and history, and they have been amazing with me over the 2 to 3 week period that I've been in this role of educating me and bringing me up to speed to prepare for the budgeting process. And of course, you know, our DFA, our finance team has been also extremely instrumental in getting us to this point. So some of the recent investments, as was mentioned earlier by Councilmember Sanchez and our library director, the new library cards were designed through Arts and History. I believe there were 3 different designs that were done. I'm not sure how it ended up, which designs ended up on the new cards, but I've been told they look great. Haven't seen them, but been told they look great. The other one is this piece behind this beautiful piece is called Community. That's painting behind you. That was done last year as well. And then on the dockets to get done, hopefully at some point by the end of the fiscal year, is a new mural in the 8th Street Tunnel just adjacent to the Anne Frank Memorial. So there will be an outreach with stakeholders led by the Wasmouth Foundation and to help us locate different stakeholders to come up with a mural for an artist, a call for artists to be able to do that tunnel. The James Castle House, as you're aware, we have artists in residence there. There were 5 of those last year, and there are 5 more that are proposed for 2023. You heard a great presentation by 2 of our team members on the Irma Heyman House on its preservation and construction a couple of weeks ago, and that is slated to open in September of 2022. And as Councilmember Sanchez noted, a few of you had an opportunity to tour that. If any other council members are interested, just let us know. Be happy to accommodate that. There is obviously throughout the year the ongoing care and maintenance of our city owned assets, our archives, our artifacts, our public art, and our visual art. And then this is an interesting piece in this next year. There are a number of platforms that our team has identified that will help improve our access to the collections, and not only in terms of internal but external. So both the archive and collection, these are archive space and collection space are the name of these platforms, and they are both basically internal methods for our team to be able to manage the collections. And then Cortex would be an external, which would give access to the public to be able to access the different collections that we have in arts and history. And then of course, ongoing public programming. We've added a couple of historical tours to downtown that will kick off this fall. So for requests coming forward, the Linden District fence, this is what is referred to as a portable. Look at me knowing what these things mean, you guys. Called a portable art project, which means it's an annual project that happens yearly. So if you're familiar with the Linden District fence, there'll be a call for artists, and there'll be a new project that will go onto that fence this next year, and then annually after that. The Enterprise Fund percent for art opportunities, I believe there's about a couple $100,000 roughly that comes from the general fund, and then another about $500,000 that comes from both our public works team and all the construction they're involved in, and our airport team as well. Both of those enterprise locations have art master plans designed. So Public Works has one for all their public works sites, and our airport has a master plan for airport. So there is a plan in place, but I don't have in front of you today what all those projects look like, but we will be bringing that back to you shortly. And then again, the operations of the Irma Heyman House, which will start in September. Asset inventory and maintenance planning. So one of the things that I recognized in looking at something very similar to what we do in Parks and Recreation is a long-term repair and maintenance plan for all of our assets that we have in our public art portfolio. And it's something that we have not done. We do basically a yearly analysis and then a yearly repair. And so one of the things I've asked our team to look at is, can we do one out at least like 6 years? So take a 6-year plan that would dictate what assets we're going to tackle each and every year, and then look for funding appropriately in a major art repair and maintenance to be able to do that. Again, something that hasn't been present but I think that there is some deferred maintenance I'm of the understanding of that we need to address quickly. So I've asked for that plan to be put together, and then we'll prioritize what will be coming to you very quickly to try to get done in the next year. And then one thing that I have talked to the team about is really upping our game in arts and history and public programming. And so looking at actually fee-based activities and programs. And so we're looking at adding the walking tours, which I mentioned, we're already starting that this fall, but also in our fees and charges that will be coming to you at the next hearing, we have proposed admissions, rentals, and educational and workshop fees to be built into arts and history. Doesn't mean the next director in and the team may not want to do that in the future, but I didn't want to miss a full cycle of 2023 and have to wait till 2024. So we created some fees based upon some of the programs they are talking about offering, and also programs that they may want to offer in the future and charge for. And we built that into the fees and charges process that will come to you in the next hearing.
Madam Mayor.
And I would stand for questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Doug. The admissions, rentals, and workshop fees, but we would also allow for financial aid to encourage folks who might not have the opportunity for whom that would be a hardship.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez. Yes, I don't think you can approve a fee schedule, particularly when it involves youth, and not attach that there needs to be some sort of subsidized funding for those that cannot afford to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, in a previous budget discussion, it might have been a couple years ago, there was kind of a need that we needed to evaluate long-term archive needs for our arts and history department. And I'm not sure that we continue that conversation. So that might be something that would be worth exploring going forward from a budgetary standpoint, what we might need to be looking at for long-term archive needs for arts and history. And Doug, I don't expect you to have any sort of answer for that
Madam
right
Mayor,
now.
Councilmember Halliburton, by golly, I do have an answer for that, sort of. And in fact, we're meeting with staff, Christine Miller, and to discuss the need for that long-term solution. And it is not a full building. It's a climate-controlled area that we can put our most vulnerable assets in. It's really more simplified than I think than what has been presented in the past, but our archivist is prepared to move that forward. And so we're going to get that worked out internally from a staff perspective, and then we'll be bringing it back to you to see what that future holds. Go ahead.
Mayor, thank you. Doug, I think you're just in a unique position right now to maybe address a couple of things that have been on the list at Arts and History for a while. One is figuring out the R&M on the neighborhood projects that have been done over the years, many of which are in parks and don't really have an R&M schedule on them at all. So just want to make sure that was on the radar as you're looking at this long-term repair and maintenance plan.
And Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clay, yes. The short answer to that is yes. And it never made sense to me that we're building projects and then don't attach a long-term cost associated with that.
But especially the ones that are built with neighborhood reinvestment grants, it's like, okay, those are yours and nobody maintains them. Yeah. So then the other thing that I think you're uniquely positioned, because you really run the one organization that has a retail face in a couple of places. And that is that Arts and History has always wanted a retail face since we gave up the Sesquicentennial shop. And so again, as you're working through these things, you may be just uniquely positioned to help them think that through.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clay, absolutely. In fact, we are putting their programming into RecTrack so that we can actually take admissions and registration for them through the activity guide and through our website. And then we just move the money over to JV the money over to Arts and History. So that'll be how we will start it out.
All right, thank you. And thanks, Doug. I'm going to call Chief Lee up. So we're 11 minutes ahead of schedule. I'm asking him to start with the impacts. I'm going to do that because we can't start before noon, given that we've got a lunch meeting. And many of you know, I've got a graduation party at my house, so I have a hard stop today at 2:30. So the chief has said he'll either bisect his presentation if we need to, or we can stay just a couple extra minutes longer to finish it. Everybody all at once. My mass start again on Friday. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I'll start by talking about the impacts of the investments from fiscal year 22. And I'll start by saying that the goal of the Boise Police Department is to be able to continue to deliver quality service at the level the community expects and the manner that the community expects. And so key to that was a staffing study to look at the needs for the department, especially with the growing community and the needs to ensure that we are properly positioned to be able to continue to deliver those services. That staffing study is on our way. We are about halfway through it. We do have some initial information, at least regarding internal perceptions and design and structure of the department. I'd be happy to come back and talk to council in greater detail about that if there's a desire for that at a later date. But we've also undertaken some internal resources to help frame some context for that. So Lieutenant Jim Quackenbush was doing some graduate work for his master's degree. We took advantage of the opportunity to also sit down and look at the quality of service delivery, what we have to do to ensure that the community is feeling that they're receiving procedurally just services when they're recipients of police services. And so that is helping us also frame for the matrix group that's doing the staffing study some of the distinct and unique branding of the Boise approach and what the community expects as a gauge for measuring that. There's also been an update to on-body video and taser upgrades. In short, it is better technology. The project implementation provides for a camera for every sworn member of the department. Previously, we did not have cameras for every sworn member, regardless of your assignment. You'll now have the ability to have on-body video. So a detective, for example, may be taking enforcement action, will now have it attached to an external vest that they could put on quickly, and we'll be able to capture on-body video. I think in the age that we're in now, with the expectation for police transparency, it's paramount that we have that technology. So this has enabled us to make sure that there's a full rollout there for every sworn member, as well as for our community support specialists, our non-sworn unarmed alternative response personnel that go to lower priority calls, evidence collection, a variety of other calls like that. They will now have on-body video as well to be able to document their interactions with the community. The taser enhancements, essentially it is an upgrade to the system, and it's a rollout so that every sworn member of the department will have a taser, so that essentially when an officer is responding, they have an immediate additional tool for a less lethal response if force is needed in that situation. It also brings us into line with what we would see in the industry as an industry practice of equipment and technology that they would expect all officers to be able to have. We've undertaken civil and human rights training for all existing employees. We are nearing the end of phase one, which is essentially an online orientation training course that was developed in partnership with the WASMA Center. And again, it's being rolled out to all, not just the sworn membership, but the entire department, to ensure that it's the underpinning for our leadership program as sort of our moral and ethical North Star of what the calling of the police profession is. We'll be beginning phase two, which is an immersion portion with guided tours from docents with the WASMA Center. I think we literally started them this month. And we're also looking at other partner agencies and training centers to partner with to continue to develop the curriculum so that the curriculum is matched with the development of our personnel throughout the course of their entire career. Again, I can't emphasize enough how much this ties back to the leadership and development curriculum that we're also designing. At present, there is not as robust as you might find in other states, the leadership development curriculum required by the state. So we're stepping into that space to lead and ensure that both our professional staff and our sworn membership, as they develop through their careers, develop into leadership positions, are getting the type of training that they need to succeed. There's an update to the field officer training program. We hired an outside expert to come in and complete a full review of our program and to ensure that our program was in line, or modifications, if necessary, were in line so that we were with best practices in the industry. We took those recommendations and made alterations to the program as required. We are continuing an ongoing review of that program, the process and the outcome. So again, field training for the sworn members after an officer completes academy. This is what most folks would call on-the-job training out in the field. We want to make sure that we're matching with what the industry expects and what's best practice. The priority is to maintain a staffed and highly trained field training officer cadre as we continue to hire officers. I've spoken before to council that we're experiencing generational overturn. We need to ensure that we have that element as part of our throughput to be able to ensure that as we onboard personnel, they're properly trained to be able to go out and provide police service to the community of Boise in the way they expect. Speaking of that generational hiring challenge or opportunity, depending on how you look at it, there is a recruitment committee that we've internally formed inside the police department. We're working with HR, Human Resources in partnership to discuss a recruitment needs assessment. We're really focusing on the branding and the marketing of the Boise Police Department to ensure that it is distinct and different from other departments, and that the values that we hold as core and paramount to us in this community, we're inviting officers that share those values here. It's designed with the mindset to encourage recruitment from a diverse workforce, experientially, as well as other measures of diversity. And we really want to ensure that we're also drawing from local Idahoans that are here to enter into the profession as well. So that team and that committee is really approaching the work with that lens. There's a technology strategic plan that's really looking at how we can leverage technology for efficiency. It's no secret that in policing, as with almost every other industry, technology has proliferated our jobs. The needs to make sure that we have the appropriate technology both now and into the future, that we're planning for it appropriately, and that we have systems that integrate and work well together for efficiency is key. We have an officer wellness program. I'm happy to report that the sergeant that's leading that officer wellness program recently applied for a federal grant from the Office of Community Policing. We're hopeful that that grant will be approved. We're underway to deliver sleep recovery training for officers. Unfortunately, it's a byproduct of the profession that with shift work in court, working during daytime hours, many officers don't sleep as regularly or as much as we probably should. We're looking at other alternative exercise programs to include yoga and mindfulness to help officers manage and mitigate stress in the work environment. But we're also recognizing that the home environment is key. So we've developed a spousal and significant others training program. We delivered the first 4-hour class of that to onboarding academy students this month. And we're also bringing aboard vicarious trauma training and awareness for our professional staff that often suffer some of the emotional toll that this profession takes, but are often overlooked by many other departments because of their non-frontline role. We've enhanced the liaison officer program. We continue to examine the needs for connections with our community and our vulnerable populations. I'm happy to report that we added an Asian American Pacific Islander liaison, and has been received well by the community. As a matter of fact, next month, they have been asked to help pull together various different AAPI civic groups for a community meeting that will be held in Julia Davis Park. It will be the first that any of the leaders of those organizations remember bringing them all to one table at one time to network and communicate, especially in context with the police. At present, that's an additional duty to officers. We're continuing to sit down and look at other populations that may benefit from that enhanced access point, especially vulnerable populations. And in the last year, we were able to hire 33 new officers and onboard them. To put that in some context, between 2019 and 2021, the department hired a total of 36. So the investment in recruitment, staffing efforts, those strategies, in a 1-year timeframe, we nearly match what we had in a 3-year timeframe. Really with the goal of keeping the community safe and livable in the way that they would prefer. Madam Mayor, I can move on to the other section of this if you prefer, or I can wait until after break.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're good. We've split this in half so then we can do this final 10 minutes when we get back and start the rest. So thanks.
Very well, Madam Mayor.